Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Glad to see a lot of good faces. Excited to speak. We created a group called the South End Roxbury Community Partnership because of the issues we faced as a city down in the lower Roxbury, South End area of the city, South Bay, Dorchester portion of the city. And we warned folks as a city what was going to happen when the city started to fan out services from Mass and Cass. Those tiny homes were a discussion over 2 years ago, and now they actually are placed at Shattuck, and they're looking to add to the area. And the biggest issue that I see is a lack of interest from certain entities, not only in the city level, but state level. This problem is only going to grow. It is not going anywhere. They are shoving this down our throats, if we like it or not. We are speaking to deaf individuals who have their own agenda, who are going to push this as far as they can. And they're going to continue to add services because of decentralization of Mass and Cass. This is not the first incident that has happened within Franklin Park. This is probably one of 1,000 in the last 3 years that's happened there. The bus stop on Blue Hill and Columbia Road is no longer a bus stop. It's fenced. That seems to be the solution. We have gates put at the entrance of Franklin Park that's supposed to be closed at a certain time of the day, and they're not. That would help some of the issues, but then at the same time, it takes away of the access of cutting through Franklin Park for folks who live in Hyde Park like myself. So what I want to suggest to this group is to join us when we meet. I believe we have one coming up. It's the Mass and Cass 2.0 meeting that's held once or twice a month, and we talk about all the issues we see on Mass and Cass. That's going to be a part of this conversation because it's moving. This is live and it's moving. And until we come together as a city and address this, it's not my neighborhood versus yours. It's not, one issue versus the other. It's a citywide problem. And folks have neglected for so long that we are now faced with this troubling situation in Forest Hills, on Morton Street, Mattapan Square, Ashmont, Pierce Square. So, when I drive by and the kids are seeing folks injecting themselves in all parts of the city, I said this to the city a few times and the governor. And again, I'm gonna keep advocating for change because, I had a child get pricked with a needle less than a month ago. And, he's on his last leg of a cocktail to make sure that, he doesn't shorten his lifespan, right? And the sad thing about it is our state and federal representation are never at this conversation. They're never at the table with us. We have to make sure that they get involved so they can make sure that they press the governor, soon to be whoever we elect, and at our federal level, because these folks are not responding to emails. They're not responding to phone calls. We've been getting crickets. And when I say we, the South End Roxbury Community Partnership, we are a very diverse group. We have lobbied the State House. We have lobbied City Hall. We have lobbied in so many different ways to gain the attention on this city issue. It's a humanity crisis. But at the end of this, our communities are dying. We've already dealt with the crack epidemic that half our communities are in prison. The other half is still trying to get off the drug, and it's not being treated the same. 69% of the overdoses in Massachusetts are Black and brown men and women. That's a little over 1,300 deaths a year that affect you and I. And that's not being put out there so people can better understand why it's important for us to have equitable services and treatment. And that's not happening for the people that look like you and me. So, when we see these tiny houses come up by the Shattuck, and then we have the increase of violence, let's think about the $5 million in overtime that we're spending on the police department that's doing little to nothing because they can't enforce the rules and regulations and the laws that are on the books because the higher-ups are telling them not to. So I'm going to yield my time. I appreciate you guys coming to the table tonight, and I continue to stress the importance of us adding voices to this conversation that are not professionals. I'm tired of the professionals telling us that they know exactly what we need, and we don't need them to keep shoving more crap down our throats so they can come back and give us more numbers that do not make sense. 5 million needles
Domingos,
collected in 1 year? You tell me how that makes sense.
Excuse me, Domingos, I don't want to interrupt you. Before you go, could you come back on? I want you to give everybody where you said that you have the meetings. That was really important. That was something that people said in the chat. So could you tell us how we can join the meetings on Mass Ave, Molina Cast, if there's one coming up? Thank you.
I'm gonna put the information in the link in the chat so folks can join, because this has been I'm sorry guys, my passion looks like rage, but it's not rage, it's passion. I'm tired of showing up to meetings where it's a one-sided conversation. It's being dictated by one community versus the whole city. People are controlling the narrative, so we get saturated. Again, the language in the laws, right, says most impacted communities. So of course, our community, who are the ones most impacted, wind up with the sober houses, wind up with the dispensaries. There's 2 safe injection sites on the books who are supposed to come to Boston. And that's going to be put in our community because the conversations are being in silos, and they're keeping people like myself, Jahida Lopes, and others who are fighting for a space at the table because they don't want us to spread the truth of what's really going on in Mass and Cass. There's more overdoses of you and I in the state of Massachusetts than homicides, but they put all their attention towards the homicides, which one life too many, we losing. We're at 34 murders a year, and we're already at 1,000 plus for overdoses. So the numbers for me, this has more precedence than a lot of the other issues that we're working on as a city. And if we're not willing to take, not ask, take what we're asking for, we're going to wind up in the same situations. We're losing sons, we're losing daughters, we're losing mothers, we're losing our elders because of the situations that we continue to allow others to dictate. These NIMBYs from Swamp Squad, like Miss Baker, that does not want to see needles in front of her house, but it's okay for you and I to pick up needles, give people Narcan because they're dying in front of us, which we should help our neighbors. But it's not fair to our community that we continue to be the ones to carry the burden. It's not fair.
I discovered my neighbor, Rory Coffey, and he had been encountering needles. I mean, so many needles. He actually has a website where he posted, it's called Boston Heat Map. And in just the 1 month, I think it was posted in August, he found 250 needles in the Williamsgate area. And he's been, it's stuff that's happening right out in the open. He lives on Forest Hill Street right across, just the way a lot of these other people do, like Louise and Barbara. And I just think it's important that we're heard, the people, their neighbors are heard. And so he went on the Boston site and found out that the needles really coincided with the arrival of the temporary housing. And I'm not trying to point the finger, because Pine Street should be lauded for the effort they're doing to try to get these people off the street. But at the same time, if we get to the point where we can't send our children, not my children, but your children, into the park because we're afraid of a needle laying in a ball field. I mean, there are already parks in the city where the sports teams don't go anymore because they can't be sure there won't be needles laying there, these small things laying in the grass. And so I want to get to the elephant here. Well, the gorilla here, this is like little Joe thing here, is that what about these 400 units of housing they're saying they're going to bring to the park of low threshold housing that the state, the Department of Health and Services is going to bring to the park? I mean, how can we even manage? We're even having a difficult time managing. And I know Pine Street Inn will do a good job if they keep working at it. It'll be better. But to take it from 30 people up to 400 is it's just beyond belief. I mean, it's taking the whole Long Island shelter and putting it in Franklin Park, but Long Island shelter, drug dealers couldn't go out there. They couldn't go across the bridge. Whereas
We can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. So, there's so much that's been said. I'm going to speak quickly because I know that this evening is full. I think Fred talked about the elephant in the room. I would describe it a little differently, Fred. I think the elephant in the room is that without any conversation, community process, discussion, Roxbury, Mattapan, and Dorchester have been chosen as the new site to make up for the space that was lost on Long Island Shelter. The fallout from this has been massive, and Domingo said it's just begun. It will, as the weather gets colder, it will get worse. It will only get worse. 400 units is absolutely nonsensical. The concentration in that space doesn't make any sense. And to say that this was the result of a community process is the same old, it's the same old trick. Here's what happens. We have a meeting. People get to speak. We'll speak tonight. They'll do what they want to do and says, we had a community process. That's not what this is. That's not what that was. You won't find any organization, a group on Roxbury, Dorchester, Cedar Street, Walnut Avenue side that says, I went to the meetings and I completely believe that the right thing to do is to put 400 units serving the population in Franklin Park. It makes no sense. So two things. One, fallout. And yes, it's never over until it's over. So I don't accept that this is fait accompli, but I do think that we have to think about what is going on right now. So there's been announcements that nearly every pharmacy within a 2-mile radius of our neighborhoods will be closing because they can no longer support the theft that is going on, because we've scattered people who are looking for drugs, who obviously are not working, can't pay for them, into the neighborhoods. And of course it has increased. South Bay is no exception. You can't get what you need. Basic toiletries and Target and and Stop and Shop. The Walgreens in Nubian Square is closing. I saw a list today. Now says the Walgreens on Columbus Avenue, the Walgreens on Warren Street. Folks, think about this. If in fact we are not going to be able to get access to pharmacy and medicine because they have been kind of brought to their knees under the theft because of the population that, as Domingo said, we're scattering in the neighborhoods, right? That's what's happening. This is real. This is a bigger conversation than about Shattuck. And I think we got to get a handle on it. It's not at all a collective process. Opioid death has now become the leading cause of death for Black men in Massachusetts. I think it's increased 250% since 2019. This is not a joke. This is not a conversation that we're going to resolve tonight. This idea of further concentrating recovery in a park makes no sense. I have pictures. I'm one of those people who has pictures of the tents up in the very space that the city thought, or who the state thought, by blocking it off so the kids couldn't drive through, right? So they couldn't get in. What we created is a fortress for the people who have now set up tents there, and they living there up in the bushes. And so those things don't get thought out. They don't get planned out. We have neither a maintenance or a safety plan for our parks. Not Clifford Park, not Franklin Park, while we're watching the big announcement in the ballyhoo over the new plan for Boston Commons. And you can bet that when it happens, they're going to have it. And so you can't have this conversation without talking about racism, because that's what it is. That's what it is, folks. That's what it is. And I think internally as a community, we got to get some stuff together as well, because this is probably one of 15, 20 meetings that has occurred about crime and public safety just in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I said, elected officials, if you're going to lead this, right? so that we don't have to pick, we don't have to choose, and that we should have clergy, right? We got to have clergy there. We got to have the stakeholders there. But we need an all-around plan for our parks and our space, from Grove Hall, from Nubian Square, where you have our businesses that can't open in the morning because people are having their morning sex in the doorway, and the restaurant owners got to wait till they finish before she opens. It ain't pretty. Got to talk about it, but people are living outside. And when they live outside, they're going to piss outside. They're going to crap outside. And it may disgust us, but they're living outside. And so I'm all for, we got to talk about it. I don't think anybody who's spoken, this is not about addicts. Not all of us have a story. I've lost an oldest brother and an oldest sister to addiction. Both of them at one point lived at the Shattuck or got service at the Shattuck. But that's not what we're saying. We're saying this is different. This has changed, right? We have continually been dealing with, this decision to close block the traffic in the park on the weekend. But most people don't even know whose decision was that. What was that supposed to do? What we have done by blocking community out has created more of a fortress for the people who snuck in, and now they're living there. This is not a good idea. We got to do everything we can to stop it. Having some coordinated meetings that get led by the elected officials, the clergy, the stakeholders seems to me the place to start. But we don't have a maintenance or a safety plan for this park, for Nubian Square, for Grove Hall. And so you'll see. So Pine Street will get $5 million for mass and cast, and the brothers from the nation who are trying to police Nubian Square get $30,000. You see what's happening, folks? This is crazy. People are making decisions and stopping to use that park. They're not walking their dogs. They're not walking their kids. We can't concede it. We can't. And so it's got to be more than tonight. It's got to be more than a meeting that the state calls. Brandy, you are doing an incredible job managing and making sure everybody is participating. But make no mistake, this isn't it, folks. You heard I understand you got to come on. You do the presentation about how the static and the 400 units, and this was a community process. No, it wasn't. It was a community opportunity to listen, and we were able to talk, but nobody said, I know, let's put 400 units there. It makes no sense. The first and only conversation we should be having should be about a safety and a maintenance plan for our parks, whether it's Grove Hall, Nubian, Clifford Park, and Franklin Park. It is not safe right now. And we have to stop before we allow any more activity to make it safe. So thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, no, this is crazy.